seconds away on Studio 5.
You believe what you want. You work your side of the street, and I'll work mine.
A rare look at the life of acting legend Steve McQueen.
Steve said before he died was, "My only regret in life is that I was not able to tell people about what Christ did for me."
And start your engines.
On you go!
Whoa, 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 whoa! Huh? The beach ate me.
We go from Steve McQueen to Lightning McQueen with your first look at the next chapter of the Cars franchise.
Cars fans will enjoy seeing all their characters, all their beloved characters. They're all back.
Our racing journey then heads west to see one organization deliver hope to Native Americans in poverty. Studio 5 starts now. And welcome to Studio 5, your weekly countdown of the top 5 headlines and uplifting entertainment news. We begin now with the very first two. At number 5.
Thousands packed a football stadium Sunday for what's come to be known as the Super Bowl Sunday of Christianity.
38,000 filled the Cardinals Stadium for Sunday's Harvest America crusade, with performers Mercy Me, Need to Breathe, and Jordan Sparks. Even more gathered at nearly 4,000 churches across the country just to watch. June 12th, the Monday following, how do you measure impact or change when the conference, so the crusade is done?
Well, for us, our profit margin is people coming to Christ. I want to help people get ready for heaven.
At the stadium alone, nearly 3,000 people invited Christ into their lives for the very first time. Now to number 4. Chip Gaines is a fan favorite among faith audiences.
Hold on a second, I gotta take this phone call. Mom, yeah, listen.
And they're about to get a little more from the HGTV Fixer Upper star, a new book. In his recent Instagram post, Chip said, "I've done so many dumb things in my day that I had enough material to write a book. So I did. Coming this fall, Capital Gains, Smart Things I Learned Doing Stupid Stuff."
Okay, so I love you too, Mom. I do? You think I look thin? Thank you, Mom. Okay, I love you.
Chip's book will be released October 17th. And those are just the first two in the countdown. Acting legend Steve McQueen was known as the King of Cool. In fact, nearly 40 years after his death, his rags to riches life story still fascinates. But there's one chapter of that story that's rarely told, and that is the Hollywood bad boy's journey to faith.
Steve McQueen set the action movie template for the modern day era of cinema.
He's singular, and he was the best at what he did. He was the best Steve McQueen there was.
He did have beautiful blue eyes. They were sad eyes.
Well, like most people, I've always been a fan of Steve McQueen. Everybody knows he became a big movie star. What some may not know is he was the #1 movie star in the world, 2017. He's still an icon, but here's what people don't know about Steve McQueen: the trajectory of his life. He had global fame. He was a heavy drug user, a heavy drinker, and there was a big old hole in Steve McQueen's heart. At a certain point, he disconnected from Hollywood and literally walked away. He didn't want Hollywood anymore. He wanted something else. He was trying to find a life of peace. And a very ordinary man that entered his life that was the perfect person to tell Steve McQueen the answer to the questions he had had from his earliest childhood. And here's the story I want to tell. Steve McQueen became a believer in Jesus Christ toward the end of his life. That is a story very few people know, and that is the story I want to tell in this documentary film. I'm going to follow Steve's life, and it's going to be a story like people have never seen before. And one thing Steve said before he died was, my only regret in life is that I was not able to tell people about what Christ did for me. So I wrote a book that's out now, and I'm doing this documentary film because I wanted to right that wrong.
You believe what you want. You work your side of the street, and I'll work mine.
Steve McQueen's resume by Hollywood standards today could be considered relatively short, but he is an American icon. Why do you think we're so fascinated with him?
I don't know the answer. Not everybody from his generation is an icon. I mean, one of his contemporaries, James Gardner, was a great actor, but I wouldn't say he's an icon. But James Dean, another contemporary of McQueen, is an icon. Elvis is an icon. The Beatles are iconic. Certain people transcend time and they become iconic characters. I think maybe one of the things that makes a person an icon is when there's sort of a timelessness about them. In other words, when new generations can discover them. Well, I think when you look at the performances of McQueen, there's this kind of a timelessness about him. And then it's interesting because I actually read this article in a men's fashion magazine, and you're a very fashionable guy, by the way, Ephraim. But and it asked the question, who was cooler, Steve McQueen or James Dean? And they were examining their life on the basis of the cool cars they drove. And they both drove cool cars. The movies they made, and kind of their fashion sense. And the conclusion was McQueen was cooler than Dean, which I found interesting. He lived longer, of course, but they were both in acting school in New York at the same time. James Dean found very fast stardom and, of course, died in a tragic automobile accident. But McQueen, interestingly, it's in my book, did work on Dean's motorcycle. So McQueen was in the same acting school, but he was on the side doing mechanical work.
One of the surprises for me in reading the book was the Billy Graham connection.
Here's what happened is, McQueen was #1 movie star in the world, and he came to Christ. So at 6 months or so after his conversion, Steve found out he had cancer. So Steve went to the best doctors out there, and they really gave him no hope. And so Steve had one thing on his bucket list, if you will. He wanted to meet Billy Graham. Billy agreed, flew out to see Steve. They met 2 times. The first time they spent a few hours together. And Billy's recollection was all Steve wanted to talk about was what Christ had done for him.
Greg Laurie's book, The Salvation of an American Icon, is available now wherever books are sold. And you can look forward to a new documentary in the fall. Up next, from Steve McQueen to Lightning McQueen.
You can't turn back the clock, kid. But you can wind it up again.
Hear from the stars behind Cars.
He is the ultimate guy chasing after his dream like so many of us do.
Your first look at Cars 3 is coming up. And welcome back to Studio 5. We're about to give you your first look at one of the summer's highly anticipated movies. But first, here's number 3 and number 2 in the countdown of uplifting entertainment news headlines. Now, number 3.
All the times that you ran to my parade. Yeah.
Justin Bieber continues to make headlines for his faith. The pop star screenshot the words, "I follow Jesus," to his more than 80 million Instagram followers. And it's already seen more than 1 million likes and encouraging comments.
God is good in the midst of the darkness. God is good in the midst of the evil. God is in the midst. No matter what's happening in the world, God is in the midst. And He loves you, and He's here for you.
At number 2.
One of the great playoff runs of all time is complete.
The Warriors beat the Cavs Monday to win their 2nd championship in 3 seasons, with 2 men of faith at the helm.
World champs again. Crazy. Enjoy every minute of it.
Steph Curry and MVP Kevin Durant lead the team in a near-perfect run.
To have teammates that encourage you, that lift you up, that's what we all need in life, you know what I mean? And it was amazing. Right now, just to be here with these guys, man, it's amazing.
With that, we are now just minutes from #1 in the countdown. Lightning McQueen is back at it. The animated Cars series is heading back to theaters. Here's your Studio 5 first look at Cars 3.
You are about to become the biggest brand in racing. Movie deals, infomercials, product endorsements. Ka-chow! You think you're famous now? We'll be rich beyond belief.
Mr. Sterling, what is this about?
Your legacy.
The movie's about Lightning McQueen, and we find him at a time where the racing game is sort of changing. You have these next generation racers who are coming in, they're smarter and they're faster and all these things. And it's about Lightning McQueen's sort of quest to find the heart of what racing still is.
I'm sorry. Your racing days are coming to an end.
There's a new generation of young racers that are kind of nipping at his heels, or more than nipping at his heels. They're beating him. The big nemesis for Lightning McQueen in Cars 3 is Jackson Storm. He is one of these young guns that is trying to take the title from our beloved Lightning McQueen.
Jackson Storm set a new record today when he pulled off the fastest lap ever recorded.
Jackson Storm knows how to get under Lightning McQueen's paint, if you will. He basically goes right for the age button and just pushes it until McQueen sort of like self-implodes.
I decide when I'm done.
How you feeling?
I can't go out on the track and do the same old thing. It won't work.
It's futile to resist change, man.
You know what I'd do?
What?
I don't know. I play Cruz Ramirez. She is a trainer.
I am so excited to train you. I like a challenge. I call you my senior project.
I think what's special about Lightning McQueen is that there's so many parts of him that I think everybody can connect with.
This is my last chance, Cruz. Last! If I lose, I never get to do this again.
Don't fear failure. Be afraid of not having the chance. You have the chance. I used to watch you on TV, flying through the air. You seemed so fearless.
I wish I knew what that felt like. It's a great movie for kids and adults.
Pixar does such a good job kind of telling these stories.
The racing is the reward, not the stuff.
Storm's chances of winning are 95.2%.
Go McQueen!
Rev up your engines. Cars 3 hits theaters June 16th. Still ahead, extending a helping hand to Native Americans in poverty. Studio 5 takes you to South Dakota. And welcome back to Studio 5. The wait is over. It's now time to take a look at this week's #1 story in uplifting entertainment news. At #1.
You believe what you want. You work your side of the street, and I'll work mine.
America's fascination with acting legend Steve McQueen gets 2 new chapters.
This is a story that needs to be told. And one thing Steve said before he died was, "My only regret in life is that I was not able to tell people about what Christ did for me."
McQueen fan and author Greg Laurie just released a book on McQueen's journey to faith, titled The Salvation of an American Icon. He has a documentary coming in the fall.
Here's the story I want to tell. Steve McQueen became a believer in Jesus Christ toward the end of his life. That is a story very few people know.
That's a wrap for the countdown. For our next story, we're heading west to show you how one unique nonprofit is working to bring hope to the Native Americans living in South Dakota. It's this week's Studio 5 Bright Spot.
I see individuals as such a unique piece of beauty that God has created.
Art is therapy for Brian Narcombe and medicine to heal the wounds of a traumatic history. His traditional native paintings line the walls of this building where he ministers here in Sioux Falls.
I'm outreach coordinator and pastor here at the Center of Hope. doing ministry to Native brothers and sisters.
South Dakota is home to 9 Native American tribes, with Sioux Falls being the state's largest city. Some Native Americans make their way from poor reservations here in search of jobs and greater economic opportunity. But the transition isn't always easy. Narcombe understands how hard it can be to overcome the despair. He moved here from Oklahoma City.
I always relate to them and think that our DNA is so much alike, being through foster home shelters, coming from drug abuse, alcohol abuse, that my brother, as even myself, we had to care for ourselves.
He himself turned to alcohol and drugs to deal with his painful childhood, 6 stints in rehab, and 2 prison sentences.
Going up and down in life like that, there's trust, abandonment issues that come up, not feeling loved, or my parents, you know, there's a lot of traumatizing things.
His brother committed suicide in 2006.
I was aware, I seen this was going to happen just by things he said and what he was doing, and just very brokenhearted. I didn't know he had suffered from depression.
Depression and suicide plague many of the Native Americans in South Dakota. It is the leading cause of death among young people in the state, and it hits especially hard in places like the Pine Ridge Reservation.
I talked with one man who showed me his wrists, and he said, you know, I've tried to kill myself 10 times. And he's like, neither heaven nor hell will take me.
Beth Jones leads missions trips to deliver help to people on the reservation.
I've traveled all over the world and I've seen poverty firsthand, but there's almost a joy. Overseas, the people are poor, but there's a joy despite their poverty. But when you go to Pine Ridge, it is like the poverty of a third world country, but there is such there's such hopelessness among the people. We pass out hygiene kits, but really that's just a way to get people in our doors. And so 90% of the women and kids that walk through our office are Native American from not just Pine Ridge, but other reservations as well.
Here in Sioux Falls, Jones works alongside Narcombe. Her organization Tapestry and the Center of Hope are both housed in the city's ministry center.
Well, we are an outreach-based ministry that is focused on currently the state of South Dakota and just kind of seeing all the issues amongst the Native people. It's our end goal that we would just see beautiful leaders raised up in the community. So we do a lot of outreach in the community to different places where Native Americans, usually women and children, are vulnerable. My dream is to see every woman that walks in the store that has come through so many hard things, to see them powerfully raised up as leaders. Because I know it's not going to be me that changes things on the reservations, it's going to be them.
And to learn more on how you can help, simply log on to my Studio 5 blog. Still ahead on Studio 5. Recording artist Ben Tankard steps away from the keys to deliver some fatherly advice, just in time for Father's Day. We are just about out of time for this edition of Studio 5, so let's look ahead to what we're working on for next week. When Golden State Warriors superstar Steph Curry takes the court, he sees a familiar face on the sidelines. Have you always been a basketball fan?
No. Oh gosh, not at all. I come from a very artsy family.
Your husband's phenomenal on the basketball court.
Thank you.
In the kitchen, what's the story?
He's getting better.
Salt Chef Curry with the pot. Been cooking with the Salt Chef Curry with the pot, boy.
Be sure to join us for that next week. Time now for the final word, which today is inspired by Music Man and reality TV star Ben Tankard.
The word cantankerous in Webster really means rebellious and unruly. And that's how I am against what the enemy tries to present. You've got to be cantankerous against the enemy when he comes against your dreams, when he comes against your health, when he comes against your friendships, your marriage. You can't just be lightly rebuked. You just don't lightly rebuke. I saw a movie that was coming on there. They were showing the preview, and then at the bottom they said they rated it mild violence. How do you gently kill somebody? Mild violence? Yeah, you know, so that's an oxymoron. So I'm like, cantankerous really means that if you're a believer, you got to be cantankerous against the enemy, because the Bible says that the kingdom suffers violence, but the violent have to take it by force. Nice. So my theme with the cantankerous is let's give the devil a black eye. And let's send him a note. We should never really be talking directly to him. We should just put a note on the bottom of our foot and send him a message, because that's where he should be, under our feet.
That's a great word from the gospel jazz man himself, and the final word for this edition of Studio 5. Until next time, reach out and touch me at Ephraim Graham on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat, and then you come on back and see where Studio 5 takes you next week. Bye-bye.